Welcome. This video was originally produced for the Reach Children and Youth Leader Network of the Michigan Conference of the United Methodist Church. The focus of the video is coping with uncertainty and change and mental health. Our guest speaker is Lauren Victor. Lauren has over 20 years of experience in the mental health field, including over a decade as a full-time social worker. She earned her bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Michigan and has in-depth experience working with people from a variety of ages and backgrounds. Thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to Lauren.
Thank you for joining me. I know that there's a lot going on right now for all of us. Like Kathy said so eloquently, thank you for introducing me. I've worked in mental health for a really long time. And it's been an interest of mine since I was a young girl. I struggled a lot with anxiety and depression as a kid. And I've, processed through that, and through years and years of help and introspection and soul searching, I've come out the other side. And so now I feel honored to be able to guide people through that same process. So, I wanted to focus on the dealing with uncertainty. There's so much of it right now. And, as the world, I say, reopens, there's a lot of things we don't know about. There's been a lot of changes. There's a lot of, I don't know what this is going to look like. How do I handle this? And especially, I believe, if I'm correct, that a lot of you are in leadership and guidance kind of roles in your own lives, in your careers, at home, that kind of stuff in the community. And so I wanted to kind of, give some information that would be helpful for you, and also that would be helpful in your role to guide others. So, when Kathy first gave me some ideas of what to focus on, I had like 7 hours of information. So that's kind of how I do. I overdo. So I'm working on that. But so I kind of narrowed it down thinking what's been the most helpful for me as the world's kind of opened, and what would be maybe the most helpful for you working out, in the world. And so that dealing with uncertainty. So fear as itself is a natural reaction to uncertainty. What's going to happen? What does it look like? Right. And so particularly now, this is new, it's uncharted territory. So if you're working with young people, I'm noticing, young and old, actually, it doesn't seem to have an age or a race or a socioeconomic status. Everybody is kind of reborn right now, right? We have to create sort of a new reality. So fear in itself is a natural reaction. So I just want to normalize that for everybody, that it's completely normal, and not just normal, but expected to feel kind of nervous about everything that's about to happen. And so I want to go through, there's 6 steps that I, kind of explore when working with people who are dealing with uncertainty. So with all of us, there are 6 steps to kind of processing and working through, what do each of these steps look like when you're working with other people, or when you're, kind of grounding in yourself. What does that look like, and how can I kind of combat that? So the first one is to face the fear, right? If fear is a given, if you're human and you have all of the emotional, the human experience, then you're going to have fear. So the contrary to what's comfortable for us, the first step is to face the fear. Okay, so rather than getting stuck, I hear a lot of people saying, what if, or if that happens, I work with young people, they tend to be a little over dramatic sometimes. So they'll say, I'll just die if prom is canceled, or if I can't go away to school in the fall, or if I can't see my friends, right? Friends are so important to young people, all of us. And so they get stuck in that what if, and they stop there. And so what I challenge them to do is to take it further and say, how about what will I do if? So instead of just getting stuck, you move right into that problem solving piece. So rather than avoiding it and saying, oh my gosh, I won't be able to deal with that, I'm not thinking about it, and then you hang on to that fear, I say, okay, what will you do if that happens? So rather than avoiding, then we can role play, we can problem solve around it. And the thing that problem solving does is it helps us feel more in control and helps us recognize that there are solutions to almost every problem. I'm sure someone could say, I have a problem that I can't find a solution to, but on the whole, most problems have solutions. And so let's try to kind of shift from the what if to what will I do if. I like to say to people, fear doesn't stop death, right? Things are going to happen to us. But what it does is that it stops life. So while we're worried about what if, oh my gosh, I'll just die if, it sucks away the joy from the moment. It takes us out of that living experience, that human experience of being present, and just kind of stops us from being able to live and to process things as they happen. So the second one is to focus on what you can control and do it. So a lot of times we look at the news, we have constant input of things that are outside of our control. And, especially with young people, they have a constant stream of input and information, and some of it's correct, a lot of it's not. And a bulk of it is stuff that they have no control over. And so when we focus on the stuff that we have no control over, we feel helpless, right? We feel hopeless. What can I possibly do about that? And it seems like a problem that's just going to be there. And I notice the more they sink into it, the more hopeless and helpless they feel, and the less they're in the present. They're kind of stuck in focusing on the news and the things that might happen, worlds away. Or as young people, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of control that they have, which is fortunate and unfortunate, but it can lead to this sense of what can I possibly do, and this kind of, it feels defeating. And so I'm really big on, okay, let's tease out, tell me the things. I'll have people list the things that they are worried about, the uncertainty that they are coping with. What are your fears? What's on your mind? And then I'll have them go through and kind of circle or delineate which are the things you can control and which are the things that you can't. And when we take the can't, oh, I see that little kitty, Wendy. I love your kitty. Sorry, I'm a huge animal lover, so I just see that little fur baby. When we focus on the things that I have them remove the can't control. And I say, if you are willing to, let's put those aside for the moment. And at any point, if it becomes something that you can control, then we'll focus on it then. I say, but for now, let's focus on what you can control. And that is your thoughts. Thoughts are huge. Your thoughts kind of, your feelings are unavoidable, but then how we think about those things tends to become how we talk about those things, tends to become how we act. And then that becomes a behavior, a pattern of behavior, and that's our reality. So we want to be really careful to control, manage those thoughts that are negative, and that when we're dealing with uncertainty kind of take over our brain. And this has to do with time management. It has to do with your attitude, the things that you can control, go do it, right? So the uncertainty of an illness, let's say, of the world opening, what can you do about it? Well, I can make sure that I have extra masks. I can, dip my toe in and start to kind of get back into what that real life, whatever that looks like, is in reality. And rather than just sitting back and feeling like a victim of your circumstance, right? That feels terrible. And sometimes it's like little things. We can't do any big sweeping gestures, maybe, because the future is uncertain in a lot of ways. But it's just whatever you can control, do that, which a lot of times is our mind, is our body, is, the how we're going to think about something. Are we going to be hopeless or can we be hopeful? Okay. The third one is to mitigate risks. So basically, this is a really big problem solving part, that although it's uncertain, like we don't know what the weather is going to be like, right? In Michigan, they say if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. You can't really trust the weather reports all the time. It's just a loose guide. And so I urge people, I say, well, plan for various outcomes. Now, when we're doing that, we want to be careful that we're not preparing for ridiculously absurd outcomes, because that is a trap that people can fall into sometimes, especially when we lose perspective and when we're fear-based. It's really hard to think clearly and rationally when we have that fear. So that's why those first 2 steps are kind of like face it and problem solve it, focus on what you can control. And by the 3rd step, we're already in that problem solving state of mind that should be hopefully less emotionally driven. So we plan for various outcomes. If this happens, then this. So if I don't know the weather, I can plan by bringing an umbrella. I can have a change of shoes, a change of clothes. I mean, those are things that are really easy to have in your car or bring with you. Or if I don't know if I'm going to have to pay a meter, have a jar with coins in it that's in your car, so you're prepared for that. So I know that's, weather and traffic and parking, but even in terms of like having your phone charged fully, having a battery with you. I mean, these seem like kind of minor things, but every time we prepare or feel more prepared, that level of stress, there's nothing more stressful than feeling like you are caught off guard and you're kind of trapped and stuck. And so even little things can bring comfort when we have uncertainty. Okay. So making sure your stuff is charged, making sure that you're prepared as much as you have a pen on you in case you need to take notes. You have a map, like an actual, I know this is hard to find now, an actual physical map. I don't even know where to buy one now, but in case your phone dies or doesn't work or those kinds of things. So having a list of phone numbers just in case, letting people know where you are in case there's a situation, having extra medicine on hand if you take medicine, just to feel like you're prepared and ready to kind of tackle whatever happens. Part of this is, you want to build up that confidence too. So you want to build yourself up. I've got this. I can handle this. I'm prepared for anything that comes my way. And even if it's uncertain what comes my way, I have a really good start here. Okay. So not waiting. So, a lot of times I worked with people throughout the pandemic and the stay-at-home orders, and it was sort of like, I don't know what the future is going to look like. And so there were 2 groups of people. The one group who, prepared and was like, well, I'm going to take this opportunity to brush up on my French since I've been falling behind. I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of work out or rest or, do some continuing education and that kind of stuff. And there's the other group of people who was like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm just going to step out. I'm just going to sleep a lot. I'm going to play video games. I'm going to watch Netflix. I'm going to kind of sink into the couch and just not contact my friends, let things go. And now that the life is moving on, because as we know, the only constant is change. So nothing is ever going to stay the same. The people who were working on themselves feel a lot readier and a lot more confident, whatever comes, even if they're never taking a French class again. There's something that happens in your mind when you are working on yourself and when you are becoming the best version of yourself and putting effort into that. it sends a message to your brain, to your body, to your community that I'm still going, I'm still here, I'm still a force, and I'm still worthy. That's so important to build yourself up so you don't feel helpless. The fourth step is to be agile and alert. So it kind of goes with the third, develop new skills, while you're dealing with this uncertainty. What can I get better at? What can I learn about that I usually don't have time or opportunity or the energy to focus on? New skills, pay attention to, that alert piece. It's not being focused on things you can't control and that constant stream of information. It's more of being mindful about what's happening around you. So rather than stepping out of life, and just kind of sinking into, we have to stay at home. So nobody said we had to stay in our room attached to a screen. And so it's pay attention to what's happening around you. Don't avoid things. If you're lacking in something or there's a deficit area, do something about it. So a lot of times we get into this, when there's uncertainty, we get into this thought cycle of, pointing out all the ways in which life stinks, or in which we stink, in which we weren't prepared. And, I hear the young people say, this sucks, right? This isn't fair. And so what I say to them is, what are you going to do about it? Let's get out of that zone of, I'm just going to tap out. I'm just going to give up because, there's no way I can possibly, I don't know how to do anything. And I say, do something about it. If something is bothering you repeatedly, if a relationship is crumbling, if your health is suffering, take a step and do something. Make a plan. That always feels better. And it's sort of like we're prepared for whatever comes our way. So the alert thing, if you lose your job, look for other alternatives. Keep your pulse on what's happening in the industry. What kind of skills might you need if you want to switch jobs, or if you have to, or what do we need to do if we're on one income or no incomes now? And do what you can about that, even if it's just research, right? The fifth step is one that is the most important, in my opinion, which take that, put value onto that as you will. But for me, this one is key. It's looking after yourself. So not only for people who are working with young people that we want to say, take care of yourself, but for us, for all of you, if you don't make your self-care a priority, then you are not able to really be the fullest version of yourself that you can be. If we're exhausted, we're not getting enough sleep, we're not taking time to pause and kind of, process what's going on and how we're feeling about it. If we're not eating enough, if we aren't exercising, moving your body moves out those stress hormones. And, so we want to make sure that we're balancing the stress with release, and then meditation, prayer, journaling, getting quiet with ourselves and just kind of being. This is really hard for a lot of us because we're so overbooked and young people are so overscheduled, but we are too. There's never been a time, unfortunately, it's fortunate that we are so connected that I can do this from my parents' condo in Florida, right? That's amazing. And I don't know where y'all are coming from, but probably all over, that we can do this in our homes. We can connect at any time. But the challenge is to disconnect as well, is to take those times to stop scheduling, so there needs to be a balance there where, we're processing things. If you think about a baby, they're happy and smiley and, when they're first born and they're taking in the world and all this stuff. And after a certain period of time, they get overstimulated and overstressed, and you start to see them kind of get stern, and then the tears come. And we know as adults, we go, oh, it's nap time, right? And so they take a nap, they recharge, they disconnect, they remove all of that constant stream of input, and then they wake up refreshed and hopefully and they're ready to kind of get back into the birthday party or get back into the visit with relatives and friends and things like that. So along the way, something happens where we either discount or ignore the fact that the need for naps and restoration doesn't actually go away. We just push it away. So we're just moving. We have travel, we have family, we have committees, we have book clubs, we have to make dinner, we have to plan dinner, we have to exercise, we have to read, 2 chapters for this. There's so much going on. And that's great to be committed and involved in a variety of things that are meaningful, but we might have to kind of pick and choose a little bit to make sure we get our naps in, or whatever that nap kind of looks like for you. So that doesn't go away as a baby. We just get better at shoving it down and going, I'm fine, I'll just eat on the go, or I haven't eaten all day. Like, what is that? Don't do that. You are like a machine. You need constant fuel. You also need rest. We know what happens if we try to drive a car for days on end, or if we try to drive it with no gas. And so we're the same way. What happens is we become irritable. We become emotional. I know that, we need to pay attention to that self-care piece. So it's that exercise, that meditation, connecting to people or things that are really meaningful and important to us, but kind of be choosy about your time, especially when we're dealing with something like an uncertain time, a stressful time. You want to step back and kind of prioritize yourself and what am I going to get the biggest bang for my buck? And then step back from the noise, like move away the noise a little bit. Maybe you can step back from a committee or two, or you don't necessarily train for a marathon, but you train for a 5K, or you don't have to be the best chef and have a 7-course meal every night, but could we have leftovers or meal plan, or, do things where you're kind of cutting down the noise and you're keeping the essentials for your self-care. Spending quiet time with yourself to process those emotions. That's so important. It's interesting. We go all day. We have 18 cups of coffee. We wake up, we go to the gym, we do all these things. We, move through life. And then I have these people saying, I can't sleep. And I'm looking at them like, well, yeah, because what happened is you just did and kind of pulled all this information in and you never processed it. So guess when you're going to process it? When you're trying to sleep, so we want to look at how we're kind of setting ourselves up to be exhausted and depressed and anxious and, in these dark places by some of the things that we do. Take a look at it honestly and, make those cuts where you need to. Especially when we're dealing with this uncertain time. The 6th one is to manage your expectations. So it's interesting because I hear both sides of this. So we can agree to disagree. It's totally good. But the expectations, I've heard some people say, set low or no expectations and you're never disappointed. I don't like that at all. But I think what I like to move towards is, it's good to have goals, but I think of the goals as aspirations, not expectations. So there's that saying, shoot for the moon, land among the stars. So I feel like it's really important to have goals. So we that gives us direction as to what decisions we should make today or we can make today that get us to where we're going. I have a hard time not knowing, not having at least a loose plan. I would never build a house without blueprint, and so that's kind of how I think about in times that are uncertain, right? We don't know everything. So we want to be careful not to set goals, because we don't really know, like these absolute goals, we don't know what that's going to look like. So it's almost setting yourself up for failure. But if you look at goals as aspirations, then there's wiggle room, there's flexibility there, right? And so that's kind of the direction that we want to go in for when times are uncertain, so that there's not a failure. It's, this was okay. I did the best at the time with the information I had. I did something. I had a plan. I mean, I don't know how your lives have gone, but I think I'm on plan Q, S. I don't know. My life has shifted and pivoted in so many ways. There's not even enough time, or you don't even want to know. This is not my first rodeo. It's my 80th, so that's where we really want to be flexible and gentle with ourselves. If it doesn't look the way we thought it was going to, that's okay. Right. And so to kind of, encapsulate all those 6 steps are kind of ways to ground and have that balance and face things and move forward. We're looking for progress, not perfection. And so any movement to me is forward movement. And I have some people say, I feel like I take 1 step forward, 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And I say, yeah, that sounds about right to me. And focus on that you're taking 2 steps forward. So yeah, you're going to slide back sometimes. That's okay. It's that you keep trying and you keep grounding and you keep going, okay, what happened here? You problem solve it rather than get demoralized and kind of depressed and have the wind taken out of your sails. What's the point? The point is that you're worth it, right? We're all worth making an effort for. And that needs to be at the center of everything. So the processing of emotions leads to alleviation. So if you think about your day, let's say your stress level is like a balloon, and every stressor that comes in inflates that balloon. Okay. So you wake up late maybe, and you don't have time for the breakfast you wanted. And, you see that your gas tank is on empty, and, you have all these stressors, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And someone looks at you a weird way, and someone says something that's off-putting, and, all of these things kind of inflate that balloon. And we know what happens when we don't deflate the balloon, right? We blow up. And so that can look like panic attacks for some people. That can look like meltdowns. That can look like, just kind of being inconsolable and stressed and just yelling at someone, kicking, hitting. For young people, it tends to be more demonstrative, but that sometimes stays with us throughout our lifespan. We're just maybe better at hiding it. And so what you want to do is take those self-care things, those times to process those emotions, to deflate that balloon as the day goes on. That is key. You do not wait until you're a sobbing mess on the ground to breathe. Please do not do that. So it needs to be something that you do throughout the day. And listen, I know that we don't have a lot of time. For most of us, taking an hour to meditate quietly in a space where no one bothers us is almost impossible. That's like a dream, right? To get a full 8 hours of sleep. Like who is that? Who's doing that? And so I do it at stoplights. I do it just, to be blunt, like I do it sometimes when I'm washing my hands, going to the bathroom, like whatever, walking from here to there. I will take a moment and how am I doing? Wow, that was weird when they looked at me like that. I wonder what that means. Or do I need to even wonder what that means? Can I let it go? If we give ourselves time to be in those emotions, which as adults, we like to shove those away. How many times do we tell people, stop being so emotional, calm down, don't worry about that, let it go. And those are phrases we think that we're being helpful by saying, you know what, let that go. But the problem is that we're cutting off that emotional processing when we do that. So we want to give it space to be like, wow, I'm feeling really stressed and tired and anxious today, and kind of sit with it for a little bit problem solve it. And then you don't have to say, let it go. Then it kind of dissipates on its own. The power of those really tough feelings kind of goes away. You might still be stressed and tired and frustrated on some level, but once we've kind of, you know, leaned into it a little bit and kind of, you know, admitted that it's there, then we can kind of go, wow, that's a big feeling. Whew. Okay. And kind of move through it. When we say to someone, calm down, let it go, they might let it go, but their body and brain hasn't let it go yet. So, you know, the kid on the playground who's upset, when we say dry your tears and get back in the game, they sometimes go back in the game and they're not really ready. So they hit someone, or the next thing that inflates their balloon, they didn't deflate it. So that's going to be a big blow up and out they go again. So we want to take that time to process those emotions and to alleviate that stress. So when we're talking about change, I wanted to, since a lot of you are leaders and people look to you, I wanted to kind of go through, there are 4 stages of change and coping with change and what that looks like. And I'm guessing that as I go through this, I want you to think about people or yourselves, which stage you've been at and what that has looked like. And for me, this is, when I explain this to people, they're like, oh, that makes so much sense. And it's important to know what step you're at to know how to problem solve that step. It's not a one size fits all. There's going to be different things that we do at each level. So when we're talking about the pandemic, that first stage is shock and disorientation. So if you can think about when this first happened, we had a lot of people who were kind of like, that's not happening. That's not real. This isn't a thing. This is going to go away. This is the media. This is the government conspiracy, whatever. I mean, I heard so many amazing things that I was like, that's an interesting theory. Thank you for sharing. And so there's this kind of like, you'll notice some people are really confused. Some people are in denial. Some people are kind of spacey, or they're numb, or they're just not really present. They miss appointments. There's forgetfulness. There's avoidance of, I'm just going to wait this out. And there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty in that step. And so what we want to make sure we do when you see people who are in that shock and disorientation step, or when it's us, that we want to seek out reliable information. That's so important to look at facts. And I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there was so much misinformation. It was, dumbfounding. And I remember hearing, oh, you can get coronavirus from your dog. And I remember thinking, oh, well, that's it, because I'm not going to stop kissing my dog. That's just how I work. So I was like, well, that's terrible. That's this and that. And then, I looked into it and was like, is there actual factual information, peer-reviewed sources, scientific, not the kid that I went to high school with who barely graduated and I haven't seen in 20 years. Why would I read his post on Facebook and change my entire life? Right? So especially with young people, I will say, that's interesting. Where did you hear that? TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, QAnon, all of these things, that Instagram. I'm like, there are valid sources on those sites, but holy cow, we need to do our research before we and base our actions and our feelings, our reactions on reliable information, right? So yeah, there was someone who kind of started this, you might be able to get it from your dogs, but there was no actual factual information out there. And so I was able to kind of let that go. The second step is that angry and emotional state, right? This is where the fear comes in. So this is the blaming part. This is the pessimistic part. This is the, I'm going to buy up all the toilet paper in the world part. This is the, we start to turn against our friends and neighbors. This part was really upsetting for me because I saw people kind of, that vigilante justice. They would take pictures of their neighbors who were having friends over and put them on the internet. And we were kind of, reacting instead of responding. I see the difference of reacting and responding. Reacting to me feels really emotional. It feels thoughtless. It feels very impulsive. And it's sort of like a knee jerk. How could you? Oh my gosh, everybody needs to know what you are. It's very emotional and fear driven. And so responding is when we use mindfulness and kind of patience and thoughtfulness to problem solve what could be happening here and pick a solution that has this grounded in rational thinking. Okay, so that's where a lot of times I'll ask people, do you think you're reacting or responding? Once in a while, the decision we make when we're reacting ends up being the right one. Great. But a lot of the time, it's not. And that's when we go, what was I thinking? The answer to that is you weren't, right? And so especially when something's really important to us, take your time, kind of chill a little bit and see how it feels. Give your neighbor the benefit of the doubt and kind of, okay, what could that mean? Do I maybe go and talk to them first? Do I look at more of what's going on before I put them on blast all over the internet, before I maybe destroy someone's business, right? I saw a lot of that and it was really disheartening to me. A lot of times that stuff was based on lack of information or misunderstanding or miscommunication. You don't want to destroy someone's livelihood or someone's reputation based on a knee-jerk reaction, because you can say sorry, but you might have put something into play that you can't take back. This for young people is really, really important, that just because you think someone's talking to so-and-so, or just because it makes sense that she would start that rumor, like, hold on a second. Let's respond instead of react. And it feels so much better when you do that. There's nothing that you're going to need to be embarrassed about or regretful in that sense. And so you want to stay grounded. You want to process your emotions, but avoid drowning in the sorrow. Okay. So there's a difference between processing emotions and saying, I have people who will say to me, I'm taking the week off. I've had it. I want to sit on my couch and zone out on Netflix and eat a bunch of ice cream. There's nothing wrong with ice cream or Netflix, but eat everything in the house and just sleep all day and cry. And I'm like, and I'll say to them, I'll challenge them and say, why do you need a week to do that? Right? Why do we even need a day to do that? And I'll say, what is your plan? What else are you going to do to work through this? So at the end of that week, at the end of that day, you've somehow processed this and worked through it. And so sometimes I'll say, could you maybe just take an hour and drown in your sorrows and then kind of like, okay, let's move forward. Could you take a day? I'm really big on taking mental health days, but what a mental health day looks like is being active, moving your body, meditating or doing yoga or prayer or reading something that speaks to you, connecting with someone who lifts you up. Hugs, feedback. That's what a mental health day looks like to me. That recharges us. You're not just putting, pulling the wool over your eyes, sticking your head in the sand. That doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. And so when those people do that, they're not any more prepared the next day. The next day doesn't feel any different. So the third stage is when we're coming to terms. Are there puppies? Where are puppies? I don't see puppies. Am I missing them? Don't do that to me. Oh, puppies. Okay. I love puppies. Hi, puppy. So, the coming to terms with the new, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I can't. That is so healing. That's a perfect example of deflating those. Yes, for mental health day. Exactly. Deflating. Oh my God, all these babies. Deflating those stressors. Like there's nothing like that snuggle from that fur baby, that unconditional love, right? To kind of deflate all those stressors. Dogs are amazing. Animals in particular are amazing. If we watch them, they wag their tails when they get fresh water. Like, I wish we were all like that a little bit, that, oh my gosh, it's beautiful out, or it's snowing, or whatever it is, I'm alive today, and take a moment to ground in that. I love that. So little tangent there, always welcome. So coming to terms with a new situation, you want to resist resentment. Let's say you lost your job during the pandemic. A lot of people had very big changes in health, in financial situations, in family situations. I saw a huge rise in separations and divorce. People who had to, like I said before, be on one income, be on unemployment. That was really hard for them. There were a lot of things that changed overnight, and we have to pivot. And then coming to terms with that situation of the new job or the new way of life, and being patient with it, right? We don't get used to things that are so big overnight, right? So being patient, being kind to yourself, and making it kind of work. You want to generate positive outcomes. Okay, I did have to take a pay cut, and this isn't the job that I trained for, but maybe I can learn something. Maybe I can connect with people. Maybe I can network with this. Maybe while I'm doing this job, I can continue searching for what I really want. Or maybe you realize that that wasn't what you thought you wanted, actually wasn't. It's sort of that saying, be careful what you wish for. How many times have we gotten exactly what we thought we wanted and then gone, oh, whoops, oh gosh, or it changes, and we have to be willing to change with it. Your frame of mind with that makes such a world of difference, whether you feel helpless and hopeless, or whether you feel positive and hopeful. And, that everything feels different when we shift that perspective. So coming to terms with it, the fourth step is that acceptance of, accepting it. You're moving forward. You're not forgiving. You're not forgetting your past. You're not giving up on your previous situation and experiences. That is part of your journey. And maybe we can get back to that. Sometimes we have to sidestep. We have an obstacle, and so it's accepting this is my new normal, and that's okay. And I'm going to make the best out of the experience. And even though it can feel kind of like, okay, whatever, I'll tell you that it really makes a big difference. For instance, I'm doing this for you this morning, and you might not be able to tell, but I was extremely nervous. I was sweating. I was, and so I really try to ground, instead of getting stuck in that, like, what if, it's going to go poorly, and what's the point, and can I get out of this, and I'm going to forget everything, instead of doing that, it was, okay, this is okay. If I mess up, I mess up. If I lose my place, I lose my place. I'm human. And that probably just makes me more relatable. The shift in that mindset makes such a difference. I immediately stop sweating. I get a drink of water. I kind of review my notes and build myself up with, you got this. Like, these are humans just like you, and do your best and move forward and learn something from the mistakes if you make them, right? The pain in life is inevitable, right? So I say pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So we don't have to look at what's about to happen as the world opens and suffer through it. We don't have to kind of look at everything in life that happens, we're going to have feelings and setbacks and drawbacks and disappointments and frustrations. That is inevitable. But suffering in it, getting stuck in it, feeling negative about it is completely optional. And the best part about that, the thing that I feel great about, is that the only difference is up here. So we actually have the ability to make or break whatever comes our way. And how we do that, you want to kind of control your thoughts a little bit, right? So, well, like I was saying, the feelings, we can't control our feelings. You can't. I've tried. So feelings become thoughts. And like I said, those thoughts become words, and those words become actions, and actions become patterns of behavior, and that becomes our reality. So we can't control feelings, but we can control the way we think about things, about events, about circumstances. We want to be positive whenever possible. Positive is different than delusional. Okay. So I'm not going to go ahead and say, you know what I'm going to think about, like, waking up tomorrow as a magical unicorn, and I'm going to fly off to a land where everything's made of candy and there's puppies all around. Okay. That's not what I'm talking about. So I'm not talking about creating an idea that is magical. I'm creating an idea that is it's basically what I tell people is I'm cautiously optimistic. So I'm based in reality, but I'm going to think and assume and project and try to feel the best about things. And, everything changes. What can I learn from this? How can I grow? How strong am I going to feel? How amazing are we? We are warriors that we had this global pandemic. We figured it out. We, retreated to our homes, to our families. We made the best of this situation. How amazing is this going to be, looking back and going, holy cow, look what we did, And so kind of thinking about that in that way, focusing on how good it's going to feel when I get the gold medal or those kinds of things, being positive about it. Sports psychologists, you'll hear these professional athletes, and they don't, before a huge event, the US Open, the Olympics, that kind of thing, they will talk about how they go through in their head a game or a match or every point, and they're winning it in their head and what they're going to do and how that's going to feel, and standing on the podium and getting that medal and hearing your national anthem. They do not think about losing and messing up and the embarrassment, and it's going to be on camera forever, because that is defeating. That doesn't feel good. So we want to try to project in ourselves and to the people we work with that, assume good intention and be cautiously optimistic. It makes a huge difference in whether the world is scary and whether we're fearful and whether this seems like too much and it's overwhelming, and, or whether it's exciting and it's an opportunity to grow. And I know it's not always exciting. Sometimes it kind of is terrible. And so in those moments, we really want to be careful that we don't make it deeper and scarier than it needs to be, facing it, processing it. And the better you are at this, the better the people you're working with are going to be. That kind of bleeds into everything. And people can tell, if you're stressed out, if you're tired, if you're emotional, if you're, kind of on edge, the people you're working with, that sets a tone for everything. I remember when we were in school and the teacher would walk in and you knew within 30 seconds if they'd had a bad day, if they were in a bad mood, and we switch immediately. We don't want to have to do that. We want to present, we don't want to have the people we're working with have to constantly adjust to us and our moods. And so we want to manage those, right? We want to manage them effectively and bring the stress level down and project an air of, this is okay. This too shall pass. Nothing stays the same. Be prepared, be proactive, be mindful, take some rest. I mean, who doesn't want to take a nap? and so those things are really important. I wanted to share, do I have time to share a grounding technique that I use? I remember, all of the continuing ed, and I'd go to these workshops and I felt like they do the research part and they do their background and and I felt like I would walk away from these workshops and be like, okay, but what do I do in real life? And so I wanted to share a grounding technique that I use that I feel like is really efficient and effective to kind of clearing the mind and reducing that stress and that fear. And so I'm gonna stand up for a minute. You want to kind of, you can do it sitting, that's totally fine. I like to sit on the ground because I feel like I try to imagine like rooting into the ground, like my butt almost grows roots. So I feel grounded and the ground is supporting me. I'm part of the earth and part of all of this. It's not just me in my world with my problems. And so I ground and I'll sit up because the more space you have to breathe, the more space there is for things to flow. If we're like this, we have bad posture. A lot of us, we're hunched over a computer or whatever, we want to sit up and we want to put one hand, I do one hand on your heart and one hand on your stomach. And we have our shoulder blades kiss in the back, or you can imagine that you're trying to hold a pencil between your shoulder blades. And so we're straight. And what I say is you want to breathe from the lower space. When we're breathing from here, if you're seeing your shoulders go up, that's the breath we use to hyperventilate. Hyperventilating typically leads to a stress response. We want to open here, and it takes a minute to get used to it. So your stomach should kind of go out, which is the opposite of what we're taught, unfortunately, that like, no, suck your stomach in, let that go. And we kind of put one hand on our heart, one hand on our belly. So we're connected to the root and connected to our heart center. And we breathe in through the nose, and it's about 5 breaths. I love if you can close your eyes, that's amazing, or cast your gaze downward, because you want to reduce all of that stimulation and that input as much as possible. So you take that deep breath into your stomach. So you should feel your stomach expand. So we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, inhale. You hold it at the top for 3 breaths. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to exhale through, you can inhale through the mouth. I like to inhale through the nose. I'm sorry. I like to exhale through the mouth, or you can exhale through your nose. And you do that for 5. And so it's very, very difficult. If you do that if you do 5 deep breaths, it's almost impossible to stay at that heightened state of stress that you were at when you started breathing. Like, I mean, people will say, that doesn't work for me. And I will respond with, are you human? Are you from a different planet? Do you not have like the lungs? Is there a different way that you biologically function? It is scientifically proven, peer-reviewed resources, science, that when you ground and when you breathe those deep body breaths, you're sending a message to your brain and to your body that we are okay. Okay. So that's kind of what I find that really helpful. And for people who have a lot of panic and anxiety and uncertainty, which might be all of us right now, I recommend doing that the first thing in the morning. And then just throughout the day, you can set reminders on your phone. You don't want to wait till you're panicking. It's very difficult when you're having a panic attack to do this. But you can, and that's often one of the first things that I say is, I want you to clear your mind of everything else. And the way that we do that is we breathe and you focus on your breath and maybe have a mantra of calm, quiet, peace, rest. And that's all you focus on. You do not problem solve at all. There's no critical thinking. And so I find that to be really helpful. If people do that 5 times a day, they're a different person. Absolutely. So something that small can make such a big difference. Then we're grounded and we can actually problem solve. And so hopefully some of the things I said today help. I know this is so overwhelming for all of us, and I'm so grateful for you all taking the time to, I mean, this in itself is a deflation of your stress balloon, and that's so important.